Have you ever been looked at like you didn't belong in a place you actually paid for? For Jordan Banks, a simple flight home turned into a nightmare of humiliation. Dressed in a hoodie and sneakers, she walked onto the tarmac toward her brand-new $75 million Bombardier Global 7500, only to be physically blocked by the very crew she signed the paychecks for. They called security. They threatened to have her arrested. They laughed in her face. But they didn't know one crucial detail. The trash they were trying to throw off the runway was actually the boss. And when Jordan finally revealed her identity, the firing spree that followed wasn't just business. It was legendary. Stay tuned, because the karma in this story hits harder than a turbulent landing. The wind whipped across the tarmac at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, carrying the sharp scent of jet fuel and cold asphalt. Teterboro was the playground of the elite, the silent hub where Wall Street giants, Hollywood royalty, and old money dynasties slipped in and out of the New York area without enduring the chaos of JFK or Newark. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the gate of Signature Flight Support, one of the premier FBO's fixed-base operators on the airfield. The driver, a stoic man named Henry, stepped out and opened the rear door. Out stepped Jordan Banks. To the casual observer, Jordan didn't look like the owner of the biotech firm Genvax, nor did she look like a woman whose recent patent acquisition had just netted her 9 figures. She looked tired. She wore a charcoal grey oversized hoodie from a university gift shop, black leggings, and worn-out Nike running shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she carried a battered leather duffel bag that had seen better days. She had been up for 36 hours straight, negotiating a merger in a claustrophobic boardroom in Manhattan, and all she wanted was to get to her ranch in Montana and sleep for a week. "I'll handle the bags, Miss Banks," Henry said softly. "No, Henry. You go home to your family." "I've got this," Jordan replied, her voice raspy. She slung the duffel over her shoulder. "I just want to get on the bird and pass out." Henry hesitated, but nodded. He knew Jordan wasn't the type to stand on ceremony. She tipped him generously, waved him off, and turned toward the glass doors of the private terminal. Inside, the atmosphere was hushed and sterile, smelling of expensive espresso and leather. A few businessmen in bespoke suits sat in the lounge, sipping scotch. Jordan bypassed the main desk. She had already filed her flight plan via her assistant and headed straight for the glass doors leading to the ramp where her jet was waiting. It was a beauty. A Bombardier Global 7500, the Rolls-Royce of the skies, painted in a custom matte midnight blue with silver accents. It was her first flight on this specific aircraft since upgrading from her older Gulfstream. She hadn't even met the new flight crew yet. Her management company, Apex Aviation, had staffed the plane for her while she was closing the deal. She pushed through the doors and walked onto the concrete. The whine of auxiliary power units from nearby jets filled the air. As she approached the stairs of her aircraft, she saw 2 figures standing at the bottom of the steps, chatting and laughing. One was the pilot, a tall man with a jawline that looked like it had been chiseled from granite and an ego to match. He wore his uniform with practiced precision, captain's bars gleaming, hat tucked under his arm. This was Captain Grant Mitchell. Next to him was the lead flight attendant, a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a layer of makeup that looked ready for a magazine shoot. She was checking her nails, looking bored. Her name tag read Beatrice. Jordan approached, head down, fighting a yawn. As she placed a foot on the bottom step, a hand shot out and blocked her path. "Whoa, hold it right there," Captain Mitchell barked, his voice cutting through the wind. "Where do you think you're going?" Jordan looked up, blinking. "Excuse me." The cleaning crew isn't scheduled for another 20 minutes, Beatrice chimed in, not even looking up from her nails. And usually, you use the service entrance, not the client stairs. You're tracking grit onto the carpet. Jordan paused, adjusting the strap of her bag. I'm not the cleaning crew. Catering, then? Mitchell scoffed, looking her up and down with open disdain. We didn't order anything from a place that delivers in whatever that is you're wearing. Look, honey, you're lost. This isn't a Delta flight to Atlanta. This is a private charter. Turn around. Jordan took a deep breath. She was too tired for this. I'm not catering. I'm the passenger. Now, if you could just move, I'd like to get out of the cold. Mitchell and Beatrice exchanged a look. Then, Beatrice let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. The passenger? Beatrice repeated, her voice dripping with acid. Sweetie, this is a Global 7500. Do you know how much it costs just to fuel this thing? I think you're confused. Maybe you're looking for the staff shuttle bus. It parks behind the hangar. My name is Jordan Banks, Jordan said, her voice hardening. Check your manifest. Mitchell crossed his arms, planting his feet wide, physically blocking the stairs. He didn't check a manifest. He didn't check an iPad. He just stared at her with a smirk that suggested he dealt with riffraff like her all the time. I don't need to check a manifest to know you don't belong on this jet, Mitchell said smoothly. The owner of this aircraft is a high-profile executive. We were told to expect a VIP. You look like you just rolled out of a shelter. Now walk away before I call security and have you cited for trespassing on a secure airfield. Jordan stared at Captain Mitchell. The wind bit at her face, but a different kind of heat was rising in her chest. It wasn't just anger. It was that familiar, exhausting disappointment. She had bought this plane 3 weeks ago. She had personally approved the interior design, the mahogany trim, the cream leather seats, the specific layout of the galley. And yet, here she was, being barred from her own property by a man she was effectively paying $200,000 a year. Captain Mitchell, is it? Jordan read his name tag. And Beatrice, I'm going to ask you one more time. Step aside. I am tired. I want a glass of water, and I want to take off. If you don't move, this is going to end very badly for you. Beatrice scoffed, stepping forward to stand next to Mitchell, reinforcing the wall. Are you threatening us? Did you hear that, Grant? She's threatening the crew. I heard it, Mitchell said, his eyes narrowing. Listen to me clearly. This is a secure area. You are violating FAA regulations by attempting to board an aircraft without authorization. I don't care who you say you are. We are waiting for Mr. Sterling. Jordan frowned. Mr. Sterling. The actual client, Beatrice said smugly. Mr. Angus Sterling. We received the briefing this morning. We are flying a VIP to Montana, a business tycoon. Not you. Jordan's mind raced. Angus Sterling. That was the name of the broker who had handled the transaction of the plane for her. He must have been the contact point on the paperwork Apex Aviation sent to the crew. Because Jordan valued her privacy, she often used her LLC's name or a representative's name on initial briefings to avoid paparazzi leaks. But the final manifest, the one they should have legally reviewed, had her name on it. Angus Sterling is the broker, Jordan explained, trying to keep her voice level. He arranged the staffing. He isn't the passenger. I am the passenger. My name is on the flight plan filed with the tower. Call the tower. Call Apex Aviation. Just make a phone call. I'm not calling anyone for a trespasser, Mitchell spat. He took a step down the stairs, towering over her. You're trying a scam. I've seen it before. People try to sneak onto jets for Instagram photos. You want a selfie? Is that it? Get your picture and get lost." "I don't want a selfie," Jordan said, dropping her bag on the tarmac with a heavy thud. "I want to go home." "That's it," Beatrice snapped, and she pulled a walkie-talkie from her belt. "Security to stand 4. We have a hostile individual refusing to vacate the ramp, requesting immediate removal." Jordan let out a dry laugh. She reached into her hoodie pocket. "Hands!" Mitchell yelled, flinching back as if she were pulling a weapon. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Jordan slowly pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the CEO of Apex Aviation. His name is David Ross. Do you know him?" "Everyone knows David Ross," Mitchell sneered. "And I'm sure he has no idea who you are. Put the phone away." "You really don't want me to make this call, Captain," Jordan warned, her thumb hovering over the contact list. "If I make this call, you aren't flying this plane today. You aren't flying any plane today." Beatrice laughed, a high, shrill sound that grated on Jordan's nerves. "Grant, look at her. She's delusional. Just wait for security. Don't waste your breath." At that moment, a white security vehicle with yellow flashing lights sped across the tarmac, screeching to a halt near the wing of the jet. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts, looking tense. "Problem, Captain?" the older officer asked, eyeing Jordan suspiciously. "Big problem," Mitchell said, straightening his tie and putting on his authoritative pilot voice. "This woman is trespassing. She attempted to force her way onto the aircraft. She claims she's the owner, if you can believe that. She's been aggressive and refused to leave when instructed." The officer turned to Jordan. He was a heavy-set man named Officer Kowalski. He looked at her hoodie, her messy hair, and her sneakers. Then he looked at the sleek, multi-million-dollar jet. The bias was instant and visible. "Ma'am," Kowalski said, his voice heavy with boredom and authority. "You need to step away from the aircraft. Let's see some ID." "I have my ID," Jordan said calmly, "but I also have the registration documents for this aircraft on my phone. If you just look—" "I don't need to look at your phone," Kowalski interrupted. "I need to see a government-issued ID, and then I need to escort you back to the public terminal. You can't just wander onto the tarmac at Teterboro. This is a federal zone." "I didn't wander," Jordan said, her patience finally snapping. "I was driven here by Signature Flight Support's valet. I went through the secure gate. I am supposed to be here." "She snuck in," Beatrice lied smoothly. "I saw her jump the fence near the fuel depot." Jordan's eyes widened. "Excuse me? You are lying to the police now?" "That's enough," Kowalski barked. He unclipped a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Ma'am, turn around. You're being detained for trespassing and creating a disturbance." "You have got to be kidding me," Jordan muttered. "Turn around," Kowalski shouted, stepping into her personal space. "Do not touch me," Jordan said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming ice cold. "Officer, if you put those cuffs on me, you will be facing a lawsuit so large your precinct will be paying it off until the next century. I am asking you for the last time to verify the tail number of this plane, N750JB. JB, Jordan Banks. Verify the owner." Kowalski hesitated. There was something in her voice, an absolute, unshakable certainty, that made him pause. He looked at Captain Mitchell. "Captain, did you check the tail registration against her name?" Kowalski asked. Mitchell rolled his eyes. "Officer, look at her. Does she look like she owns a $70 million Global 7500? She looks like she's here to steal the liquor minis. Just get her out of here so we can prep for Mr. Sterling. He's due any minute." Jordan stared at Mitchell. "Grant, you are going to regret this moment for the rest of your life." "Get her out of here," Mitchell shouted, losing his composure. Kowalski grabbed Jordan's arm. Jordan didn't resist, but she didn't move either. She stood, planted like a tree. "Officer, Before you drag me away, look behind you." The sound of another engine approached. A sleek black Mercedes Maybach rolled onto the tarmac, followed closely by a generic airport operations sedan. The Maybach had flags on the fender, diplomatic or high corporate level. The cars stopped right next to the police cruiser. Captain Mitchell straightened up, a bright, obsequious smile instantly replacing his scowl. Ah, this must be him. This must be Mr. Sterling. Finally. He brushed invisible dust off his jacket and nudged Beatrice. "Look alive. The VIP is here." Beatrice quickly checked her makeup in a pocket mirror and put on a wide, welcoming grin. They completely ignored Jordan, assuming the police officer would drag her out of sight before the real client stepped out. The driver of the Maybach hurried around to open the rear door, but it wasn't a white businessman named Angus Sterling who stepped out. It was a man in his 50s, wearing a sharp navy suit, looking frantic. He was holding a briefcase and sweating despite the cold wind. This was David Ross, the CEO of Apex Aviation, the management company that employed the crew. Behind him, from the operations sedan, stepped the airport director of Teterboro. Mitchell's smile faltered slightly. "Mr. Ross? Sir? We weren't expecting you. But is Mr. Sterling with you?" David Ross didn't even look at Mitchell. His eyes scanned the scene frantically until they landed on Jordan, who was currently having her arm gripped by Officer Kowalski. David's face went pale. All the blood drained from his cheeks. He broke into a run. "Officer, stop! Let go of her!" David screamed, his voice cracking. Kowalski froze, looking confused. "Sir, we have a trespasser." "Trespasser!" David Ross reached them, breathless and terrified. He looked at Jordan, then at the officer's hand on her arm. "Get your hands off her! Do you have any idea who this is?" Mitchell stepped down from the stairs, confused. "Mr. Ross, calm down. This woman claimed to be the owner. Beatrice saw her jump the fence. We were just—" "She jumped the fence?" David Ross spun around to face Mitchell, his eyes bulging. "You idiot! She owns the holding company that owns Apex Aviation. She effectively signs my paycheck, and she definitely signs yours." The silence that fell over the tarmac was heavier than the jet itself. The wind whistled, but nobody moved. Captain Mitchell's jaw dropped. He looked at Jordan. Really looked at her. He saw the way she stood, not with the fear of a trespasser, but with the quiet, simmering rage of a titan. Beatrice put a hand over her mouth, her eyes darting between David Ross and Jordan. Officer Kowalski released Jordan's arm as if it were red-hot iron. He took 2 steps back, mumbling, "I was told she was—" Jordan rubbed her arm where the officer had grabbed her. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She simply adjusted her hoodie, picked up her battered duffel bag, and looked at David Ross. "David," Jordan said calmly, "you're late." "Ms. Banks," David stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I saw the notification that your flight hadn't departed. I tried to call the captain, but he wasn't answering. I came as fast as I could." "Your captain," Jordan said, gesturing to Mitchell, who looked like he was about to vomit, "was too busy threatening to have me arrested to answer his phone." Jordan turned her gaze to Mitchell. The pilot was trembling. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a primal fear. "Ms. Banks," Mitchell started, his voice shaking. "I had no idea. The briefing, it said Mr. Sterling." "The briefing said the contact was Mr. Sterling," Jordan corrected him, her voice sharp as a razor. "The passenger manifest listed Jordan Banks. Did you read the manifest, Captain?" Mitchell opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Did you?" she demanded. "No," he whispered. "I assumed." "You assumed," Jordan repeated. "You assumed that because I was wearing a hoodie, I couldn't afford this plane. You assumed that because I am a black woman, I must be the help or a criminal. And you assumed you could treat me like garbage because you thought I was powerless. She turned to Beatrice. And you. You lied to a police officer. You said you saw me jump a fence. That is a criminal offense, Beatrice. Filing a false police report. Beatrice began to cry. I just wanted to protect the plane. I didn't mean... Jordan turned back to David Ross. David, I want to go home. But I am not flying with these people. Get them off my plane. Now. Yes, ma'am, David said instantly. He turned to Mitchell and Beatrice. You heard her. Get your bags. Get off the aircraft. You are relieved of duty immediately. But how will you get home? Mitchell stammered, trying one last desperate attempt to save his job. We're the only qualified crew available for the Global 7500 on short notice. You need us. Jordan smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Do I? She reached into a duffel bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound logbook. It was an older pilot's logbook. Grant, she said softly. I have 3,000 hours in command of heavy jets. I was flying Gulf Streams before you finished flight school. I don't need you to fly me. I need you to get out of my sight. She turned to David. I'll fly left seat. You find me a co-pilot who isn't a racist, incompetent moron. I'll wait in the lounge. Mitchell looked at the plane, then at Jordan. He had just realized the full extent of his mistake. He hadn't just insulted a passenger. He had insulted a pilot, a boss, and the owner of the very ground he was standing on. Wait, Jordan said, just as Mitchell was turning to slink away. He froze. One more thing, she said. One more thing, Jordan repeated, her voice cutting through the whistling wind of the airfield. Captain Grant Mitchell stopped it. He turned slowly, his face a mask of pale dread. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. Yes. Miss Banks? Jordan pointed a finger at his chest, specifically at the 4 gold stripes on his shoulder epaulets, the universal symbol of a captain, a commander, someone trusted with lives and millions of dollars of machinery. Take them off, she said. Mitchell blinked, confused. Excuse me. Your epaulets, Jordan said, her voice devoid of emotion. And your Apex Aviation ID badge. You represent my company. You represent me. And as of 5 minutes ago, you lost the privilege to wear that uniform. I don't want you walking through that terminal looking like a captain. You aren't one anymore, not on my payroll. A gasp escaped Beatrice, who was still sniffling into a tissue nearby. The few ground crew members who had paused their work to watch the commotion stood in stunned silence. To strip a pilot of his stripes on the tarmac was the ultimate humiliation. It was a court-martial in the open air. Mitchell's hands trembled as he reached up to his shoulders. He fumbled with the fabric loops. His pride, which had been so immense just moments ago, crumbled like wet chalk. He unbuttoned the epaulets, pulling the gold stripes free. He looked at them in his hand. Years of flight school, thousands of hours of training, reduced to 2 pieces of fabric held by a man who had just thrown it all away for the sake of prejudice. He handed them to Jordan. She didn't take them. She nodded toward the ground. Drop them, she commanded. Mitchell hesitated, a flash of anger trying to spark behind his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by the presence of David Ross and the police officer. He dropped the stripes on the oil-stained concrete. The badge, she added. He unclipped his ID from his breast pocket and dropped it next to the stripes. Now, Jordan said, stepping aside and clearing the path to the terminal. Get off my airfield and take your lying flight attendant with you. Mitchell and Beatrice began the long, agonizing walk back to the terminal. They didn't walk with the swagger they had arrived with. They trudged, heads down, shoulders slumped, dragging their roller bags behind them. Every step was a mile. As they passed the glass windows of the FBO lounge, they could see the faces of other pilots and billionaires pressed against the glass, watching. The grapevine of private aviation was faster than a jet. By the time they reached the parking lot, everyone inside knew what had happened. They were pariahs. On the tarmac, the atmosphere shifted from tense to apologetic. Officer Kowalski cleared his throat. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the asphalt. He took off his hat, wringing the brim in his large hands. "Ms. Banks," Kowalski started, his voice rough. "I want to apologize. I should have verified the registration immediately. I let Captain Mitchell's statement cloud my judgment. It won't happen again." Jordan looked at the officer. She saw a man who had made a mistake, but unlike Mitchell, he wasn't malicious, just lazy and biased. "It won't happen again, officer, because next time you judge a book by its cover, you might be arresting a Supreme Court justice or a foreign diplomat," Jordan said sternly. "You almost put handcuffs on the woman who just donated a new wing to the local hospital. Think about that next time you see a hoodie." "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely." Kowalski nodded vigorously. He tipped his head to David Ross and practically ran back to his patrol car, desperate to escape the blast radius of her authority. David Ross, the CEO of Apex Aviation, looked like he was about to faint. He was a man who prided himself on running a tight ship, and his ship had just sprung a massive leak in front of the Admiral. "Jordan," David said, using her first name but with a tone of immense respect. "I am mortified. I will personally oversee the hiring of a new crew. I will vet them myself. I will—" "Save it, David," Jordan sighed, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving her exhausted again. She picked up her duffel bag. "I don't need speeches. I need a co-pilot. I wasn't joking. I'm flying the bird." David's eyes widened. "Ms. Banks, with all due respect, you've been up for 36 hours. Is it safe for you to—" "I'll sleep in the bunk for 2 hours while we prep and wait for a first officer," Jordan countered. "I need the cockpit. It's the only place I can think clearly. Who do we have on standby?" David pulled out his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. "We have a reserve list. Most are an hour out. Wait, there's a freelancer currently in the pilot's lounge. Young guy. Just got his type rating for the Global 7500. He was flying right seat for a charter that got cancelled this morning." "Is he competent?" "He's green," David admitted, "but his simulator scores were perfect. And he's hungry for hours." "Send him to the plane," Jordan said, turning toward the stairs of her jet. "Tell him he's flying with the owner. If he flinches, fire him too." Jordan walked up the stairs of the Global 7500. As she stepped into the cabin, the smell of fresh leather and luxury surrounded her. It was a stark contrast to the cold wind outside. She dropped her bag on one of the white divans and walked straight to the cockpit. She sat in the left seat, the captain's seat. She ran her hands over the yoke, the cool metal grounding her. She flipped the battery switches, bringing the avionics to life. The screens flickered and glowed, a digital symphony of flight data. This was her sanctuary. Here, it didn't matter what she wore or what color her skin was. The aerodynamics didn't care. The gravity didn't care. The plane only cared if she knew what she was doing, and Jordan Banks knew exactly what she was doing. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment, listening to the hum of the avionics fans. "They thought I was the cleaning lady," she thought, a bitter smile touching her lips. "Let's show them how the cleaning lady flies." 20 minutes later, Jordan was in the galley making herself a strong espresso when she heard a hesitant knock on the open fuselage door. She turned to see a young man standing there. He couldn't have been more than 25. He was black, with short cropped hair and a uniform that looked a size too big for him, likely bought off the rack. He was holding a flight bag and looking around the cabin with wide, awestruck eyes. "Hello?" he called out softly. "Mr. Ross sent me. I'm Elias Thorne." Jordan took a sip of her espresso and leaned against the galley counter. "Come in, Elias. Don't stand in the wind." Elias stepped inside, carefully wiping his shoes on the mat, treating the carpet like holy ground. He looked at Jordan in her hoodie and leggings. He blinked. "Oh, sorry," Elias said, giving her a polite, warm smile. "I'm looking for Captain Banks? Or the owner?" "Mr. Ross said I'd be flying with the boss." Jordan smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had cracked all day. This kid didn't assume she was the help. He just assumed he hadn't found the right person yet. "I'm Jordan Banks," she said, extending a hand. Elias froze. He looked at her hand, then at her face. The realization hit him. But unlike Mitchell, it wasn't followed by judgment. It was followed by pure, unadulterated shock and admiration. "You're the owner," Elias stammered. "And the captain?" "That's right," Jordan said. "Problem?" No, Mum. No way," Elias said, shaking her hand vigorously. "I mean, wow. I read about you in Aviation Week, the biotech merger, right? I didn't know you were type-rated on the 7500. That's incredible." Jordan's shoulders relaxed. Finally, a professional. "Grab a coffee, Elias. We have a flight plan to Montana. You ever flown the Global 7500 in real life, or just the sim?" Elias looked sheepish. "Just the sim, Mum. And one ferry flight with no passengers. This would be my first live leg with a VIP. "Well, the VIP is me," Jordan said, moving past him toward the cockpit. "And I'm not going to yell at you, but I expect you to know your flows. Can you handle the radios and the FMS, flight management system, while I fly?" "Yes, Captain, absolutely." "Good. Stow your bag. Let's get this bird in the air. I want to be out of New Jersey before I lose my temper again." As they settled into the cockpit, the dynamic was instant. Jordan moved with the practiced ease of a veteran. Elias moved with the sharp, nervous energy of a rookie trying to impress. "Clearance is on file," Elias said, reading from the iPad. "Taterboro to Bozeman. Flight level 450. Squawk 426-1. "Dial it in," Jordan commanded, her fingers dancing over the overhead panel, starting the APU, Auxiliary Power Unit. As the engine spooled up, a low, powerful whine that vibrated through the frame of the jet, Jordan looked out the side window. She saw David Ross standing by his car, giving a thumbs up. She saw the empty space where Mitchell and Beatrice had stood. "Elias," Jordan said, as she taxied the massive jet toward the runway. "Yes, Captain? You know why you're here today?" "Because the scheduled crew had a conflict?" Elias guessed. "Because the scheduled crew couldn't see past their own bias," Jordan corrected. "They looked at me and saw trash. You looked at me and saw a person. Remember that. In this industry, your eyes are your most important instrument. If you can't see what's right in front of you, you'll kill someone." Elias nodded solemnly. "I understand. Tower, Global 750 Juliet Bravo, holding short of runway 19, ready for departure." Jordan spoke into the headset, her voice crisp and professional. "Juliet Bravo, wind 220 at 10, cleared for takeoff runway 19. Turn left heading 240, contact New York departure," the controller replied. "Cleared for takeoff, Juliet Bravo." Jordan advanced the throttles. The two massive Rolls-Royce Pearl engines roared to life, unleashing thousands of pounds of thrust. The jet surged forward, pressing Jordan and Elias back into their sheepskin seats. As they thundered down the runway, passing the private hangars and the rows of parked jets, Jordan felt the weight of the day lift. The anger, the humiliation, the fatigue, it all stayed on the ground. "V1," Elias called out. "Rotate." Jordan pulled back gently on the yoke. The nose lifted, and the $75 million machine defied gravity, leaping into the grey sky. Below them, on the ground, the story was just beginning to catch fire. While Jordan was climbing through 10,000 feet, a video was being uploaded to TikTok and Twitter. It had been recorded by a teenager sitting in the back of a parked SUV near the fence line, a plane spotter who had been filming the jets and had inadvertently captured the entire confrontation between Mitchell, the police, and Jordan. The video was titled, "Pilot Tries to Arrest Black Woman, Finds Out She Owns the Jet, Karma Teterboro." By the time Jordan reached cruising altitude, the video had 10,000 views. By the time they crossed into Ohio, it had 100,000. And down in the Teterboro terminal, Grant Mitchell was sitting at the bar, nursing a whiskey, staring at his phone as his notifications began to blow up. He didn't know it yet, but the one more thing Jordan had mentioned wasn't just his badge, it was his reputation. "Captain," Elias said, monitoring the systems as they cruised at 45,000 feet, the sky a deep, dark indigo above them. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead," Jordan said, engaging the autopilot. "What are you going to do about them?" "The crew?" Jordan looked out at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the clouds in fire and gold. "I already did it," Jordan said softly, "but the world is about to do the rest." "You believe in karma, Elias?" "My grandmother says it's a boomerang," Elias smiled. "You throw it out, it comes back to hit you." "Grant Mitchell just threw a very heavy boomerang," Jordan murmured, "and I think it's about to take his head off." Suddenly, the satellite phone in the cockpit buzzed. It was a priority call from the ground. Jordan frowned. Few people had this number. She picked it up. "Banks." "Jordan, it's Angus. Angus Sterling." The voice on the other end cracked. It was the broker. He sounded frantic. "Angus," Jordan said, her voice dropping. "You have some explaining to do. Why did the crew think you were the client?" "Jordan, listen. I am so sorry. It was a clerical error. My secretary sent the wrong cover sheet. But that's not why I'm calling. Have you seen the internet?" "I'm flying a plane, Angus. I'm not scrolling Twitter." "What is it?" "It's viral, Jordan. The whole thing. A plane spotter caught it in 4K. It's everywhere. CNN just called my office asking for a comment. Last Boycott Apex is trending. And Jordan, people found Mitchell's identity. They're tearing him apart." Jordan felt a strange sense of detachment. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't filmed it. But she wouldn't stop it. "Tell the press I have no comment until I land," Jordan said coolly. "And Angus, you're fired too." "What? Jordan, please, Click. She hung up the phone and looked at Elias. "Looks like we're going to have a welcoming committee when we land in Bozeman," she said. Elias looked at the phone, then at her. "Good news or bad news?" "For us." "Good news," Jordan smiled, a shark-like glint in her eyes. "For everyone else, Judgment Day." The cockpit of the Global 7500 was a sanctuary of dark quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of the instrument panels and the stars hanging above the curvature of the Earth. Outside, the temperature was 40 degrees below zero. Inside, it was a calm, controlled 70 degrees. Jordan monitored the descent profile into Bozeman Yellowstone International Airport. The Gallatin Valley was hidden beneath a blanket of darkness, punctuated by the twinkling grid of streetlights from the town below. To the south, the jagged silhouettes of the Spanish peaks cut into the moonlit sky like the teeth of a saw. "Bozeman approach," Jordan said, her voice steady. "Global Juliet Bravo is descending through 14000, Information, Quebec." "Juliet Bravo, expect the visual approach, runway 12, the controller replied. "And Juliet Bravo?" Go ahead, Jordan keyed the mic. Just wanted to say nice flying, Captain. We saw the news. Welcome home. Jordan exchanged a glance with Elias. Even the air traffic controllers in Montana knew. The story hadn't just gone viral. It had gone global. Thank you, approach, Jordan replied softly. While Jordan and Elias navigated the complex airspace of the Rockies, the world below was tearing itself apart on their behalf. The video recorded by the plane spotter, a 17-year-old kid named Kevin, had been picked up by every major news outlet. The footage was damning. It was high definition, stabilized, and the audio was crystal clear. The world watched Captain Grant Mitchell sneer. They heard him call a billionaire catering. They heard Beatrice lie to a police officer about fence jumping. They saw the police officer almost arrest a black woman standing on her own property. And the internet, in its terrifying hive mind efficiency, had gone to work. Within 2 hours, #BeourJetWhileBlack was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Grant Mitchell's LinkedIn profile was found, inundated with thousands of comments, and then deleted. But screenshots lived forever. Aviation forums were ablaze with pilots dissecting his behavior. The consensus was brutal. He had violated the cardinal rule of aviation: respect. But the karma didn't stop at mean tweets. Back in New Jersey, Grant Mitchell was sitting in a hotel bar near Teterboro, trying to drown the memory of Jordan's eyes in a glass of scotch. He hadn't looked at his phone in an hour because it wouldn't stop vibrating. The bartender, a burly man wiping down the counter, had been watching the TV mounted in the corner. CNN was running a segment. Billionaire CEO Jordan Banks, racially profiled by her own crew. The bartender looked at the screen. Then he looked at the man sitting at the end of the bar. He looked at the epaulets Mitchell had stuffed into his pocket, but which were peeking out. The bartender picked up the remote and turned the volume up. Apex Aviation has issued a statement claiming they have zero tolerance for discrimination, the news anchor said. However, sources say the pilot, identified as Captain Grant Mitchell, has a history of complaints that were ignored by management. Mitchell flinched. He stared at his drink. The bartender walked over and pulled the glass of scotch away from Mitchell's hand. "Hey," Mitchell snapped, looking up with bloodshot eyes. "I wasn't finished." "Yeah, you are," the bartender said, his voice loud enough for the few other patrons to hear. "We don't serve your kind here." Mitchell blinked, confused. "My kind?" "Racists," the bartender spat. "Get out." "You can't kick me out," Mitchell slurred, his arrogance trying to surface through the alcohol and fear. "Do you know who I know exactly who you are," the bartender interrupted. "You're the guy who tried to arrest Jordan Banks. My wife works for her foundation. She paid for my daughter's insulin last year when insurance denied it. So, yeah, get out before I throw you out." Mitchell looked around. The other patrons, businessmen, travelers, were staring at him with open disgust. Someone held up a phone, recording him. He scrambled off the stool, grabbing his coat, and fled to the bar. He ran into the lobby, his phone buzzing again. He finally looked at it. It was an email from the FAA. Subject: Notice of Investigation. Emergency suspension of airman certificate. Mitchell stopped dead in the middle of the hotel lobby. It wasn't just a firing. The FAA was pulling his license, pending an investigation into reckless conduct and falsifying reports to law enforcement. He had lost his job. He had lost his reputation. And now he had lost his wings. He sank onto a lobby sofa, put his head in his hands, and wept. But nobody came to comfort him. High above the Gallatin Valley, Jordan Banks disengaged the autopilot. "I have the aircraft," she said. "You have the aircraft, Captain," Elias confirmed, his hands hovering near the flaps lever. "Gear down." Gear down. 3 green. The Global 7500 was a massive bird, but Jordan handled it with the finesse of a fighter pilot. She lined up with the runway lights of Bozeman, fighting the crosswind that swirled off the Bridger Mountains. Flaps 30, landing check, she commanded. Speed brakes armed, gear down, flaps set, landing clearance received, Elias recited. The runway rushed up to meet them. Jordan flared the jet at the last second, the main wheels kissing the asphalt with a gentle screech that was barely felt in the cabin. She deployed the thrust reversers, and the engines roared, slowing the beast to a taxi speed. "Nice landing, Captain," Elias breathed out, clearly impressed. "Thanks, Elias. Welcome to Montana." Jordan taxied the jet toward the private hangar complex at the far end of the field. Usually, it was a quiet, desolate place at this hour. But as she turned the corner onto the ramp, she saw lights. Lots of lights. "Is that press?" Elias asked, squinting into the darkness. There were news vans parked outside the fence, but inside the fence, waiting near the FBO doors, was a small group of people. Jordan set the parking brake and shut down the engines. The sudden silence was ringing. "Shutdown complete," she said, unbuckling her harness. She looked at Elias. "You ready to face the music?" "I'm with you," Elias said, straightening his tie. Jordan walked back into the cabin, grabbed her battered duffel bag, and opened the main door. The automatic stairs unfolded with a mechanical whir. The cold mountain air hit her instantly, crisp and clean, smelling of pine and snow. It was the smell of freedom. She walked down the stairs. Waiting for her was not a mob, but a small, solemn delegation. There was the manager of the Bozeman FBO, looking nervous. There was a local sheriff's deputy, looking respectful. And there was a woman holding a clipboard, Apex Aviation's regional director, a woman named Sarah, who looked like she was walking to her execution. Sarah stepped forward as Jordan's sneakers hit the tarmac. "Miss Banks," Sarah said, her voice trembling, "on behalf of Apex Aviation, I have been instructed to deliver a formal apology. We have arranged a car for you. We have—" Jordan held up a hand. "Sarah, isn't it?" Jordan asked. "Yes, Ma'am." "Sarah, tell David Ross that apologies are free. My business is not. Effective immediately, I am terminating the management contract for this aircraft and the other 3 jets in my fleet. Apex is fired." Sarah went pale. The loss of the Banks account, 4 heavy jets, was a revenue hit of millions of dollars a year. It would likely bankrupt the regional division. "Ms. Banks, please. We can discuss this. We fired Mitchell. We fired Beatrice. You fired them because you got caught," Jordan said calmly. "You didn't fire them because you cared. If I hadn't been the owner, if I had just been a regular passenger, Mitchell would still be flying, and I would be in a jail cell in New Jersey right now." Jordan stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut like a knife. "That culture starts at the top, Sarah. You tell David that his stock price is going to drop tomorrow morning, and tell him I might just be the one buying the pieces when it crashes." She turned to Elias, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, looking unsure of what to do. "Elias," Jordan said. "Yes, Captain? You're not working for Apex anymore either." Elias looked crushed. "Oh, I understand. I was just—" "You're working for me," Jordan interrupted, a small smile playing on her lips. "Direct hire, my personal flight department, double your current salary, full benefits, and I pay for your type rating to be permanent." Elias's jaw dropped. "Ma'am, I need a first officer who knows how to act like a human being. You start Monday. Now grab your bag. I'm giving you a ride to the hotel." Jordan threw her bag into the back of the waiting SUV, not the one Apex had sent, but her own ranch truck that Henry had arranged to be brought around. as she climbed into the driver's seat of her dirty Ford F-150. Leaving the $75 million jet gleaming under the floodlights, she looked at the Apex executives standing frozen on the ramp. She rolled down the window. "Oh, and Sarah?" "Yes, Ms. Banks?" "Tell Beatrice she can keep the uniform. She's going to need something to wear to her court hearing. My lawyers are filing for defamation and emotional distress in the morning." Jordan put the truck in gear and drove off, leaving the private jet, the stunned executives, and the wreckage of 3 careers in her rearview mirror. 6 months later, the snow had melted from the peaks of the Gallatin Range, replaced by the vibrant green of Montana summer. But for Grant, Mitchell, and Beatrice, the winter of their discontent had only just begun. The fallout from the incident at Teterboro hadn't just been a news cycle, it had been a tsunami. In a sterile courtroom in Newark, New Jersey, the air conditioning hummed, doing little to cool the sweat on Grant Mitchell's forehead. He sat next to a public defender, wearing a suit that now hung loosely on his frame. The stress had taken 20 pounds off him. Across the aisle sat Jordan Banks's legal team. They were sharks in bespoke Italian wool. Jordan herself wasn't there. She didn't need to be. She was busy running a biotech empire. Her lawyers were doing exactly what she paid them to do: dismantle her enemies piece by piece. The judge, a stern woman with no patience for theatrics, looked over her glasses at Mitchell. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, her voice echoing in the quiet room, "the FAA has already permanently revoked your ATP certificate for gross negligence and falsifying reports. That handles your career. Today we are discussing the civil suit regarding defamation and the filing of a false police report." Mitchell stared at his hands. He had no defense. The video was everywhere. His lie about Jordan jumping the fence had been disproven by CCTV footage from the FBO, which showed her walking through the front door, scanning her badge, and being waved through by the concierge. "My client accepts the plea deal," his lawyer mumbled, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. The deal was brutal. Mitchell was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a restitution fine that wiped out his savings. But the real sentence was the silence. His phone never rang. His pilot friends had blocked him. He was a pariah. The sky, which had been his home for 20 years, was now a place he could only look at from the ground. Beatrice fared no better. She had been fired for cause, meaning she was ineligible for unemployment benefits. The Karen of the tarmac, as the internet had dubbed her, couldn't get a job at a grocery store without someone recognizing her. She had been forced to move back to her parents' house in Ohio. Her career in luxury service turned to ash. Meanwhile, the corporate world had exacted its own price. David Ross had tried to save Apex Aviation. He went on talk shows. He issued apologies. He donated to charities. But the business world is small, and trust is the only currency that matters. When Jordan Banks pulled her 4 jets, and the lucrative management fees that came with them, other clients got nervous. If Apex treated a billionaire owner like a criminal, how were they treating the clients' families? Dominoes fell. 2 other major accounts switched management companies within the month. Apex's stock plummeted 40%. By the spring quarter, the board of directors forced David Ross to resign. The company was eventually bought out for pennies on the dollar by a competitor. And who was the silent investor behind that competitor? Genvax Ventures. Jordan Banks didn't just fire them. She effectively bought their remains, stripped the assets, and integrated the good planes into her new in-house flight department. She had turned an insult into an acquisition. But the sweetest victory wasn't in the courtroom or the boardroom. It was at 45,000 feet. On a bright Tuesday morning, the Global 7500, now re-registered with a new tail number, soared over the Atlantic Ocean, bound for Paris. In the cockpit, The atmosphere was light and professional. "Fuel check's good," First Officer Elias Thorne said, marking the log. He wore a crisp new uniform, tailored perfectly. He had finished his type rating with top marks. He wasn't just a diversity hire, he was a damn good pilot, and Jordan had given him the mentorship he needed to shine. "Copy that," said the captain. But it wasn't Jordan flying left seat today. She had hired a new chief pilot, a veteran woman named Captain Sarah Jenkins, who had been passed over for promotion at Apex for years. Jordan sat in the jump seat, observing, a cup of coffee in her hand. "You know, Ms. Banks," Elias said, turning slightly. "I saw Mitchell yesterday." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Where?" "I was at the cargo depot picking up a package for the flight. He was driving a delivery van for a logistics company. He looked old." Jordan took a sip of her coffee. She didn't feel glee. She didn't feel triumph. She just felt the cold, hard satisfaction of balance restored. "He's working," Jordan said simply. "That's more than he gave me credit for. He thought I was unemployed." "Did you say anything to him?" Elias asked. "No," Jordan replied, looking out at the endless blue horizon. "I didn't have to. He saw the plane. He saw the logo. He knows." She stood up, patting Elias on the shoulder. "You two have the comms. I'm going to the back to get some sleep. We have a meeting in Paris, and I plan on buying a vineyard." "Aye, Captain," Elias grinned. Jordan walked back into the cabin. She took off her shoes, curled up on the divan, and pulled a soft cashmere blanket over herself. She wasn't wearing a hoodie today. She was wearing a comfortable silk blouse. But inside, she was the same woman. She closed her eyes, lulled by the hum of the engines, her engines. They had tried to keep her on the ground. They had tried to put her in cuffs. They had tried to tell her she didn't belong in the sky. But as the jet chased the sun toward Europe, Jordan Banks slept soundly, knowing that in the end, the only thing that mattered was who held the keys. And she held them all. And that is the story of how a simple assumption destroyed 3 careers and a multi-million-dollar company. Jordan Banks didn't just get mad, she got even, and she did it by using the very systems they thought would protect them. It serves as a brutal reminder to everyone, from the tarmac to the boardroom. Humility costs nothing, but arrogance can cost you everything. Grant Mitchell learned the hard way that the person you're disrespecting today might be the one signing your paycheck or ending your career tomorrow. In a world where cameras are everywhere and karma is swift, treating people with dignity isn't just the right thing to do. It's a survival strategy. Wow, what a ride! I want to know what you would have done if you were in Jordan's shoes. Would you have fired them on the spot, or would you have let the police drag you off just to sue them for even more money later? Let me know your battle plan in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story about karma hitting back. We have a crazy story coming up next week about a gold digger who rejected a lottery winner. And you do not want to miss that. Thanks for watching. Stay humble, and I'll see you in the next video.